We're going it old school, folks, and I do mean old school. We're going to be playing with a bunch of spices and stuff here, some summer savory, and some salt, and bread, and cabbage, and pepper, and cloves, and allspice, and a little bit of blood, and a lot of pork, and even some cracklings. We are making Traipen. Oh, an old Luxembourg dish. Both sides of my family come from the Luxembourg era, and this is a really good sausage to make. I've enjoyed making it over the years with my uncles and aunts, and it's been wonderful. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take cut up pork butt and pork shoulder, and we've got about 12 and a half pounds of it, and we're going to cook it. We're going to cook it for about an hour, and we're going to cook it about 350 degrees in the roaster, and the roasters are full of water. Then we're going to start making our spices. Our spices are pretty easy to do. They're not too tough. We're going to put our salt in first. We need about 4 ounces of salt, is what the recipe says, but I don't use as much. I use about 5 tablespoons and call it good. Then we're going to go to our pepper. Pepper, the recipe calls for about 8.8 ounces, so that's about 1.6 tablespoons. I'll let you kind of figure that one out. I had to do a little rough math in my head to get that one going. But either way, that's the pepper. And then when we get done with these two, there are more dry ingredients. Then we're going to go to some of the more fun ingredients, so to speak. So again, salt and pepper are kind of your base for this sausage, which is great. And this sausage was, originally a Luxembourg sausage. It was kind of a heritage kind of thing in the day. It would have been a sausage that people would have used around the midnight mass or the All Saints Day mass. It's really kind of a neat sausage. So we're going to put in things like our clove. We're going to get that in. That's about a half a teaspoon. Our allspice is going to be a fourth of a teaspoon. And our summer savory is going to be like 1 1/4 cups of that. So I'm just getting all the dry ingredients going. Well, like I said, I filled up the roasters with the pork butt and pork shoulder, 12 and a half pounds. I put water on them to make sure they're just about to the point they're going to float. And we've got them in the oven at 350 degrees for an hour because we want that pork to get up to about 150 degrees for its internal temperature. And while that's doing that, I'm just working on the dry ingredients here. And again, it's really a unique sausage. It's a very delicious sausage. It just takes some ingredients that you gotta look around for. Well, I wasn't able to get my summer savory wide enough to put the measuring cups in, so I'm gonna do it this way instead. I need 1 1/4 cups of summer savory. In the old country, they would have called this, like a bohnenkraut. The name of the spice is a little bit different, but summer savory is what we call it here most of the time in the U.S. if you have to grow it. And this is homegrown. We grow this right here on the farm, which is fantastic. We grow it, we dry it, and we crumble it up. Notice it's not a dust. We're just crumbling it up till it's small enough pieces. It seems to give a little better flavor to the sausage that way. And honestly, we raise this spice just for this sausage. It can be used in so many other things. So many other things. So I got the first half a cup in. I'm getting the next half a cup here going so I can get this all together. Once you get all the spices that are dry together, it's always good to mix it. I find that works best. This is kind of a 2-day process because you're going to cook the pork on day 1 and you're going to work with the cabbage and the bread and make all your spices up on day 1. Then you're going to let that sit, and then you're going to take it on kind of day 2. You're going to actually do the work of making the sausage. So alright, so I got all that in there together. So once that's all together, then we can kind of clean this mess up a little bit and then just get to mixing it up. Again, I like to mix this up. So the salt, the pepper, the cloves, the allspice, and the summer savory all come uniform, so to speak. And you see, we don't use any salts that have, iodine and anti-caking agents, so sometimes our salt gets a little chunky, so we're breaking that up too as we do it. The pork is the main ingredient in this sausage. I'm not 100% sure though at other times that they didn't make it with other types of meat. I can't prove or disprove that, so it is what it is. I suspect in the old country they used whatever they had, but again, this was kind of a really traditional sausage. It kept really well for people, and then of course it would be used at special holidays and stuff. Luxembourg is such a small, unique country, and it's situated over there, close to the German side. So obviously it has a lot of uniqueness to it, but it somewhat crosses over with some of the food from Poland and Germany and stuff like that. So obviously this is kind of one of those dishes that has some remnants. Now I have a whole loaf of white bread here, and I dried it out overnight, so it's hard as a rock, and that's exactly what you want. You want that bread nice, hard, and dry. It's been an hour now. I took the pork out of the oven. As you can see, it's cooked. It's cooked up to about 150 degrees internal temperature. And the biggest thing you can do here is make sure you save the juice, because you're going to need it. So I'm going to take all the pork out of this pork water, and I am going to save the juice because I'm going to need it for the cooking of everything else. That's kind of an important step. As I've done Treipen now for the last, 20 years of my life, I've watched it done and done it now several times myself. I've realized there's some kind of important steps, and this is one of the steps to get the flavor right, especially when it comes to the vegetable part of it, which is the cabbage. It does so much better job. It's also what really gives the bread its flavor. So I found this to be kind of, like I said, kind of an important step in the process. So here I am. I'm just pulling out all the pork out of this, and then this is going to cool overnight, and we'll grind with it tomorrow. But we're going to use this fluid right now, and we're going to get that going here in just a second. So just going to take this all out. The pork I chose to use, I used pork butt, and I used pork shoulder, and I cut them up till I got 12.5 pounds of meat. Got a big old cabbage here. It takes a whole head of cabbage for 12 pounds of this recipe. I slice it all up, I stick it in the juice, I put the cover back on, 350 degrees in the oven for 30 minutes. That's right. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 350 degrees for 30 minutes on this cabbage and get it all cooked back up, which is great. So now the cabbage is floating. This is exactly what I want. It's a little stiff and hard right now. I think there's a piece of meat in here. I forgot. Get that out. But when I get done, it's going to be soft and leafy, and that's what we want for when we grind it. Plus, it's all getting the flavor of all this juice. So again, 350 degrees for 30 minutes. We're going to cook this now. Once that gets done, it's just a matter of timing to put everything together, cool it down, and make it. So while that's working, I'm going to take my blood. Now you can get blood different ways, folks. This is actually blood that we captured from one of our hogs that we butchered, and I strained it to get any impurities out of it, and then I'm just taking 3 1/4 cups. That's all I need of it. You do not need a lot of it. And then I've got my rock hard bread here, and a lot of people think, oh, you put this in the blood. No, you don't. Like I said, I just filtered the blood that was frozen for us, and then I measured out the 3 1/4 cups of it. And again, that blood is from one of our pigs. So I saran wrap that, and I'll put that in the fridge for tomorrow, because we're not going to use that again till tomorrow. So that's all we got to do with that. Now, an easy source of blood around me, by the way, if you don't do your own butchering of pigs, is just go to your local butcher and ask him for a half a ice cream pail full of blood. So the cabbage is out, and it looks wonderful, absolutely good. It's starting to fall apart, as you can see. So I'm going to take a strainer, and I'm going to dump the cabbage in there. I'm going to try and break it up into little smaller pieces if I can. It's awful hot, folks, at this point. But I'm going to take the cabbage out and just let it cool now in the strainer for use in the grinding process. So the cabbage is going in it. All the spices are going in it. Of course, the pork is going in it. We're going to have cracklins going in it, which I'll explain in a bit. The dried bread, which will be moist, going back into it. And then one of the final ingredients will be the blood. Now, a lot of people look at this and say, well, this is a blood sausage. Well, you probably could say it's in the same line as a blood sausage, but typically blood sausages are at least a third to maybe even close to half actual blood. So this isn't a true blood sausage, but yes, it does have blood in it. and certainly you could leave it out if you wanted to. But I do think it really, really enhances the flavor. It really brings out a mellowness that is very enjoyable when eating this sausage. And certainly it's part of the old school tradition. This is how they did it. And of course it becomes extremely healthy. It adds things to it that you would want in there for your own sake of eating it in the health of your own body. So it's a wonderful thing. And then of course nothing gets wasted on the pig. And when we butcher a pig, we'll capture an ice cream pail of this, put the cover on it, and freeze it. And then we'll just use it for when we have Traipen. And it works absolutely wonderful, folks. It's a great thing to do. So for me, Traipen typically comes in the fall after the butchering of pigs, just the way it works. So as you can see, I'm taking this rock hard bread and I'm just dumping it back into this hot cabbage water now that we cooked the pork and the cabbage in. And the bread just becomes literally mush. I know it's hard to scoop out, but it's got all that in it. Now I still got a strainer, and I'm going to put it in a strainer because I don't want it like so wet that all we're doing is adding juice back into the sausage. I want it like kind of like mush. It's maybe the consistency of like a soft serve ice cream once it cools down. So we're going to scoop all this wet, sopping white bread out of here, and we dried it on purpose so it would really soak up the fluid, okay? That's an important part too. People are like, why don't you just take the bread at the beginning and just dump it in? Why dry it? Well, by drying it out, it seems to pick up more and have more flavor. Now we can finally let go of that stuff, and then we'll keep things overnight and cool them down. So the next day here I'm out in the shop. I've got everything together. I got the spices, I got the water, I got the blood, I've got the cooled down meat, I've got the cracklins there in the bag, I've got the cabbage that's been sitting out and just drying, I've got the bread which has been sitting out and just kind of drying back out. And then in this container I've got casings. Everybody uses different casings. Mine are salted, so right now I'm going to use a 42 millimeter casing from a hog, and I'm going to put it in water. It's kind of like a room temperature water, and I'm going to get the salt off it so that I can case this stuff up. And while I'm working on untangling this mess and getting it so that I can do it, I wanted to show you here we got the crackles. Basically that's a pig skin that was cooked in an oil, and I'm going to take that. I'm going to take the cabbage, I'm going to take the pork, and I'm going to take the wet bread, which is somewhat dried now, not completely dry, it's still soft and mushy, and we're going to start grinding it up. Now there's an important part to this which I've learned over the years. To make it more authentic, like the Luxembourg people would do, you have to use a big grind. I know that sounds a little weird, but you don't want to do anything smaller than 10 millimeters on this. You want a fairly large grind. You can kind of figure that size out on your own, but for me, the 10 millimeter does really well. If you do it finer than that, it gets too granular, and that it's just not what you want. So here I've got kind of all the bread on top. My daughter is kind of alternating pork and bread and cabbage and putting it all in, okay? And then she's just shoving it in, and then I'm dumping the cracklings in. Oh, I forgot to mention, it takes a 10-ounce bag of cracklins in this recipe. And again, we're doing a 12.5 pounds of meat. We're doing a 10-ounce bag of regular original cracklins. We're doing 1 loaf of bread, 1 cabbage, and then all the spices that I listed, and then the 3 1/4 cups of blood, which will be coming at the end. But as she does this, it kind of looks like, mush here up on top, because the only thing that's got any structure to it is the pork and the cracklins. But as it comes out, it turns into a nice kind of dried, brown mix, and it's got quite a bit of texture to it with that 10 millimeter head, which is what we want. And this is going to get mixed again, folks, so don't worry about it if you don't get everything in perfect. Oh, you got too much cabbage at once and it looks a little bit more green on one side of your grinding pail than the other. Not a big deal. Or, oh, I put all the cracklins through at the end and it got a little dry and granular and gritty at the end. Don't worry about it, because again, you are going to still mix it. The blood's still got to go in it, and it works really good. Now we're going to use a mixing machine here that we hand crank, but in the day the women would take this. The Luxembourg women that made Traipen would take this, and this mixing part would all be done by hand. It's pretty dry and crumbly, and they would have mixed this by hand and then added in as the last ingredient, the blood. Well, modern day, folks, so we're going to use the mixer that I've used for everything else. If you've been following along in the last month, as we get into fall, we make a lot of different sausages, especially if we're blessed by the good Lord giving us the opportunity to take some venison. So we've been doing quite a few sausage videos again here this fall, just like we typically do. And you'll see that this Cabela's mixer works really, really good. It's just a hand crank mixer, which I like. So it works out really, 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 really nicely. But again, I'm just knocking this all into the mixer, this whole set of mixture here. And we're just going to start turning it. Now, this sausage doesn't have any pink cure in it, so it's not a sausage that needs to be smoked. It is a sausage where once you make it, you stuff it, you freeze it. And then when you go to cook it, it's a pan-fried sausage. I actually like to break the casing open and take the casing off and discard it and just fry up the sausage on a low heat with a little bit of oil in the pan, and it turns very dark, and it's very delicious. Here I'm taking half the spice and dumping it into the blood to kind of get a good mixture through. You don't have to do this, but some older ladies that were my aunts swore by this because that mixed that in and made it go into the mix better. So I'm going to take the rest of this here, and I'm going to dump that actually over the top of the actual product dry, and then at the end we'll put the wet version in. And again, why do I do it this way? Well, because it tastes delicious and it always worked, and my aunts had me do it this way, so that's just kind of the way it is. So I've got the spices mixed in the best I can, because you can see the summer savory there. The bohnenkraut tends to float. I'm not worried about it. The rest of it, while my daughter here is turning the mixer, I'm going to sprinkle in over the top. And this is, again, the allspice, the cloves, the pepper, the salt, and the summer savory. And this is what really brings out the flavor in that Treipen sausage. So here it is, all just getting mixed up. I'm just kind of sprinkling it all over the place, make sure it all gets on everything the best I can, and make the effort of mixing it a little easier than just dumping it in and letting the mixing wheels do it. Just trying to spread it all out on there. And then when we get done with this, I'm going to have her mix it for maybe, 3 or 4 minutes. And then when she's done mixing it with dry ingredients in, then I'm going to come with the wet ingredient. Once it's mixed with the wet ingredient, we're going to go right to casing it. And then from there, we do a really short cook on it and then freeze it. And it's all set. So here we go. We're starting to add things here. It's looking really, really nice. So now I'm just making sure nothing's stuck to the mixing paddle too much. That little bit of red that you see in there right now is just coming from my spatula because I had mixed the spices with the blood in it. So it has that colorant on it. But the next step here is I'm going to pour the blood in. And I just slowly pour it in. And then I'll use the spatula to get any remaining summer savory out of it that sticks to the side. And now remember, this blood is mixed with half the spices, so it's also distributing the spices throughout the meat, which is great. And there's no clots in this blood. There's no extra junk. We filtered it all out beforehand, folks. It's just nice, clean hog blood, which is great. So I'm going to get the stuffer ready here. I'm going to stuff with a fairly large tube. Again, I'm going to stuff with that bigger casing size. We're going to make it like in a ring. There's 6, 7 of us eating most nights. Occasionally there's 8 of us at the dinner table. So we're going to do a 24-inch ring tied on both ends. And then, like I said, when I go to fry that up, I'll probably end up popping the casing after it starts getting a little bit hot on the stove. I'll be pulling the casing out of it then, and I'll just be pan frying this up. I'll be plating it and serving it. People like it with it on crackers. People like it just straight up cooked. Some people like it with a little mustard or ketchup. Some people like it on a bread, and like a focaccia bread. That's fine too. It can be eaten all different ways. Here I am just trying to put the casings on. Now remember, I had these casings in the freezer in a salt solution, and now I've rinsed them all off, and now I'm casing them up. So I'm going to put them on the tube, and then we're going to press out the sausages. I'm always amazed how many times I'll find people just rip open a pack of casings and just go to start using them. You really need to wash them off, folks. There's a lot more salt in there than you think, and it might change the texture of your meat. So just want you to think about that a little bit before you just jump in on it. So once I got that done, it's just a matter of making the sausage. It's a really pretty bright sausage at this point because, again, it's not really cooked. Now, the pork was cooked, don't get me wrong, and the cabbage was cooked, but the rest of the sausage isn't. So, again, I'm going to make like a 24-inch loop here, and then we're going to tie both ends. And then we're going to take it and we're going to actually go over to about 180-degree water, not boiling. We're not boiling the crap out of the sausage. That wrecks the sausage. But we'll take it over to about 180-degree water, and we'll put each sausage in for about 10 minutes. And we'll know they're done by when we prick them, that only the clear juice comes out and no red juice comes out. It's an old school method of knowing when it's done. It only takes about 10 minutes of sausage when the water temp is 180 degrees. And then from there, we'll hang them on a rack to cool and dry, and they'll kind of get their solidified shape, and they'll get kind of rigid. And then from that, we'll put them into the vacuum seal bags and freeze them up for the winter. This recipe, I don't know, I guess depending upon how many rings you want to make, probably make somewhere around 20 rings at 24 inches long. And if you want to do smaller rings, you just get more of it. So here we go. We're just going to make another one here. Just comes out pretty nice. I've got a really nice stuffer, I'll admit that. It's been really nice. I went in with my brother-in-law in on this stuffer, and it's been a really good stuffer to use. So I like to give myself plenty of room between the tie-offs on the different ends there, and my daughter is actually helping me tie them, which is great. So I leave a space there so that she can tie both ends off and cut them and everything. So here they are all made up. Isn't that pretty? It's just a really pretty sausage to make. And it's going to turn colors, which is what's kind of unique about it. So here I got the water. It is not boiling. It's just about ready to get there. It's running a little bit hotter than I'd like. I think it's running around 190 to 199. But once I put this cold sausage in, it's going to drop right down to about that 180 mark, which is what I want. So I'm dropping this sausage in, and it's not going to take long. The sausage sinks at the beginning, and within about 5 minutes, the sausage actually floats up to the top. So right now it's sinking to the bottom, and in a few minutes you're actually going to see it all be floating at the top. And once it floats to the top, that's when I go around and I find the little air pockets on it, and I take a needle that I've heated up with a little lighter to make sure it's clean, and I prick them. And I only have to prick a few spots to know if it's done. That releases the air out of the casing, obviously, but it also tells me what the fluid color is like. And when that fluid color isn't red anymore, I'm done. I had a really cool aunt, Rita. She was really good at doing this in the day when we used to do it with all my uncles. So I'm going to try and show you the pricking here, just so you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. So I'll bring up a sausage. I'll prick it. This was not quite done. That's a tiny bit red yet. So I'm going to let that one in there. So I'm going to go to a different part, though, on the sausage, just so you can see it. Prick this one. That's white. So that end got done. The other end isn't yet. Needs a little bit more. I'll bring up another one here if I can. They are hot. It's slippery. You don't want to squeeze them too much and break your casing. Ooh, that one's really close. It's almost clear. So that's what I'm talking about. The minute I prick these and they become clear, I'm going to shut them off, take them out of the water, and throw them in some ice water and stop the cooking. So I had a bucket of ice water here. As each one got done, I took them out and I set them in there. Now they're pretty fragile at this point yet. They haven't the sausage really hasn't set up. I'm just stopping the cooking process. So I'm going to put them in this ice water, maybe 5 minutes. These ice cubes will all be melted in 5 minutes, but it'll be cooled down enough that the cooking is no longer occurring. And then my daughter is going to hang these. So she's going to hang them to dry. We find that if you freeze them wet, you're going to get more freezer burn on that casing, and that's not what you want. So it's good to dry them for that reason. The other reason you dry them is that's when they're forming in their shape and they're getting stiff on you. That stiffness helps you when you cook it, so then you can easily pop the casing and then just kind of pan fry it. Even though a little bit of it will stick to the pan, it'll pan fry it up, and you'll have a beautiful, wonderful Treipen, just like the women have done for literally thousands of years in Luxembourg, which is fantastic. So I'm just mixing the water up here just to make sure it's getting nice and cold. The ice cubes are almost gone. My daughter's going to start hanging them up now. So here she is. She's got a 2x4 going across a couple ladders at her height. That's how she did it, and that's perfectly fine. And she's setting them on the 2x4 now. Again, they're not shape formed yet, but when she's done here, she's going to let these dry for 2 hours. When we're done in 2 hours, these things will kind of be like solidified into that hang shape there right on that rod. So she's trying to hang them in the middle. And as you can see, it's a nice, easy process to do. Once these are dry in about 2 hours, the temperature outside it right now is about 50 degrees, so they're not like getting, cooked or anything by the sun or anything. Then she'll take them, go back into the shop, and we'll vacuum seal these puppies up. So this is a nice batch. One there at the end was a little short because that's all we had for material to stuff in it. But that's it. That's how the Traipen is made. Now we just got to get it set for winter to be put away. So my daughter's getting an explanation how to vacuum seal them up, how my wife wants them done. She wants them done like kind of like a ring bologna. Put them in the casing and circle formation there like that, and then seal them down. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to take these and we'll enjoy them throughout the year. We don't always just have them at special times, but certainly special times is when it was intended to be used in the old school country, and we'll use them at our special times too. We'll certainly have some probably around the Thanksgiving weekend. We'll have some around the Christmas weekend, and we always will carry this through into the Easter weekend too. It's a very unique sausage. It can be spelled a couple different ways. So if you are picking on spelling or you're a word presser, Traipen is kind of the old traditional way, and certainly they put the dots above the A on that. The American way is Treipen, and I've even seen it with Tripen. And again, it's a Traipen. It's a Luxembourg sausage. Again, to Europeans, they might consider it more like a black pudding or a blood sausage. It's similar, but it is not really a true blood sausage, and it's certainly not a true tripe. It is what it is. It is Traipen, and it is delicious, folks, if you're willing to try an old school recipe like this. Now we put it away in the freezer, and we're good for enjoyment for the whole rest of the year with this sausage. I really hope you enjoyed us putting this video together. It's an eclectic, old school video if you want to think about it that way because of the way the recipe is. It's not something people make every single day, that's for darn sure, and it's not something you can easily find in the stores. But if you do look it up, or if you do get to try it, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks for watching, folks. Please like, subscribe, and follow along. That's how we stay afloat here on the farm.